kick the show right off. We have a special guest for us. His name is Vinnie Iyer. He writes for the Sporting News. He's a fantasy football writer. He also is a host of Locked On Network to talk fantasy football. So right up our alley, Vinnie, and thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday morning.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Vinnie, you try to get from the draft to the NFL season, and one of the things that seemed to catch our eyes is you made a very interesting list of you ranked the quarterbacks from 1 to 32, and that's one of the main points we wanted to talk to you about because there were some things we agreed with and some things that some of us didn't agree with as much. Just what went into your thoughts on this list? Was it best quarterbacks now? Is it best quarterbacks going forward? What did you base this list on?
Well, I combine it with their most recent history, because we do this list year after year at Sporting News. It's been different people. So sometimes we look at it different ways, but it's really going forward. And a lot of people looked at the upside from these guys and said, why is this person who's done this behind this person who's done that? But again, it's about going forward, and the way things have worked out in this league in the past few years is you've had a whole bunch of quarterbacks emerge to be top level, and at a young age. You had Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. You had Jimmy Garoppolo last year. So the guys that have been doing it in the past are going to face a slide when these other guys come in and start executing at a really high level.
So I have the list in front of me here, and the list is up on our Twitter for all the listeners that want to just follow along with the list. And I'm just going to ask you about a few guys, and we'll start right away with number 5, Carson Wentz, because the top 4, I mean, you can any order you want. Brady, Rodgers, Wilson, Breeze, completely agree with you. Carson Wentz, though, at number 5, and, I mean, the talent is no question. The season he was having last year was unbelievable till he got hurt. But no worries going forward coming into the season that he's coming off a torn ACL. To list him in your top 5?
Well, you hear the reports out of Philadelphia, and for a guy that got hurt in December, and it's not really surprising that he's ahead of schedule. Like, no one expected him to be this far, where they're pretty much confident that he'll be out there week 1, barring a setback, which is pretty incredible. So part of it is we know that he's a physical freak of nature, the way he runs around and throws. And this guy's had some injuries in the past that he's rebounded from in college to get here. So I think he's just one of those guys that's built well, and he's going to put the mental work as well as the physical work. And we saw the transformation between year 1 and year 2. So, and that's the thing I've been impressed with him. And another guy that I had high on the list, Deshaun Watson, that they're not satisfied with just bursting on the scene, catching people by surprise with their arm and athleticism. They want to put together the mental aspects of the game and have the game slow down for them as much as possible, as quickly as possible.
And you have 2 guys on there. One you just mentioned that they have limited playing time, but they're pretty high on your list. And Deshaun Watson at number 12 and Jimmy Garoppolo at number 8. These guys didn't play a lot of NFL games, and you have them ranked rather high. What's your faith in these 2 guys?
Well, I am a big upside person in almost every list I do. I look forward, and I look at Jimmy Garoppolo, and if you look and really break down those games from last year where the 49ers won 5 straight games, you look at the comparison of what their passing game did before, and with Pierre Garçon healthy, and he wasn't healthy for Garoppolo, you look at what he did, throwing the ball downfield, aggressive, 300-yard games. The only thing that wasn't there was the red zone ability, and that was part of the 49ers' ability to run the ball there and finish drives. But now you look at this year 2, having Garçon, having George Kittle in there as a real force at tight end, and look at Marquise Goodwin. You look at Goodwin, we thought he was just a track star, and he has Jimmy Garoppolo turn him into a legitimate number 1 receiver while they were together last year. So you look at that, and then you look at Deshaun Watson. I know some teams are going to try to catch up to what he did. They kind of just let him loose last year, so you're going to run around and throw deep to DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. But with Bill O'Brien and they're going to adapt and evolve, and I think Deshaun Watson is definitely capable mentally and physically of doing that here. And he's missed time, but he's on schedule as well. So these 2 guys, the league is going to have a hard time figuring out going forward.
And before we get deeper in your list of questionable snubs, I think the earliest one I want to question you on is number 13, Jared Goff, who had an incredible season after a horrible rookie season. And then his offseason was great. He has all the weapons in the world. The Rams were one of the top offenses. And you have him at 13
I think that he could have been bumped up a little higher after the season he had and what he's got going into this season with his upside.
Yeah, I think you have Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff, or Matthew Stafford and Marcus Mariota, I think before is where I had those guys ranked. So I really don't think any less of Goff, and I think I try to make this clear with some of these rankings that if Jared Goff at number 12 is more, or 13 is more of an indication of how strong quarterback play is in this league. And looking at physical tools, I think Garoppolo and Wentz have a little bit more in him going forward, as well as Mariota. And I think Matthew Stafford, you look at his past few years, the way he's taking control of that offense, he's still a little ahead as a veteran. So I don't see that as a real knock on Goff at all. I mean, to jump up there, I mean, when he was absolutely not even for his horrible rookie year is pretty incredible.
When I look at your list, and we're talking with Vinnie Iyer, writes for the Sporting News. You can follow him on Twitter at Vinnie Iyer. Also Locked On Network for Fantasy Football podcast. When I look at it, to me, it kind of resembles more of a fantasy football type of ranking, because if I'm looking at your list and I look at, the top quarterbacks in football, and if you're talking fantasy, I get Andrew Luck being at number 20 because of his injury concerns. He hasn't thrown a football until this past week. You don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. But for top quarterbacks and best quarterbacks, like to be behind a guy like Tyrod Taylor, was this just about the injury? Because if you're talking about top talents in quarterbacks, there's no way that he should be as low as number 20.
Well, it definitely is about the injury, because I'm not sure until we see him actually throw at NFL football again, which we don't have the mystery. But his talent alone, I mean, he's more of an incomplete to me, but his talent alone shot him up to 20. Basically, he would have been a guy that I wouldn't have thought about. And maybe you look at Jacoby Brissett just because you have to look at him as the starter just in case Luck is not ready. But to me, I thought 20 was just, okay, I'm going to put him at a baseline where I kind of put 20 as kind of the end of guys that I really trust, as far as I really think they're the settled franchise quarterback for their team, at least for 2018. So I put Andrew Luck at the very end of that. But you look at it, it was just very hard at the time. We've seen him throw football since I did those rankings, so I feel a little bit better. But he could easily jump into the top 10 once we know he's healthy.
All right, Vinny, we're Giant fans. Eli Manning here at number 30. You have Ryan Tannehill, 27, coming off ACL surgery. You have Dak Prescott at 15, who just lost his starting number one receiver, his starting tight end. And all we're in front of here is Sam Bradford and A.J. McCarron. The disrespect to Eli Manning here is unbelievable.
Well, you look at Eli Manning, just the past couple of years. I mean, I know what he's done. Again, this is a hard one because we know. But at some point you got to push forward and realize there's some time in between when he made those Super Bowl runs. It's been a while. The things that haven't worked out around him, when you look at it, I think, in a way, I think this is going to be good making this change to Pat Shurmur, because I think Ben McAdoo, and as much as they try to corral Eli Manning, he's a guy that's meant to really sit back and throw the ball downfield. So I'm hopeful that will change, and that Shurmur's hybrid kind of take the good things he was doing to protect the ball at sometimes. But it was just been a rough couple of years for Eli, and I think maybe some of the wear has come on his arm, and we'll have to hope that he can rebound. But when you look at the numbers and the production here, they're really paling to a lot of these guys that have been established, that are a little bit younger, that are as well experienced, and then the guys that are coming up as well. So this is a big crossroads season to see how much more the Giants are going to go with Eli, especially with Davis Webb and Kyle Lauletta, potential projects there behind him.
You don't think Eli Manning's established enough over guys like Patrick Mahomes, Mitch Trubisky, Andy Dalton, who's never won a playoff game in his career, Ryan Tannehill over his injury? You don't think he has enough upside with the offense he has around him now either? And no Ben McAdoo anymore? I think the best thing is getting rid of that coach. But you don't think he has enough upside to be higher than 30?
Well, we have to see it. I mean, his own team is questioning that as well in terms of where you want to go forward. And you look at contemporaries like Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers, if you put them physically in what they've done of late, I mean, there's a big difference in the way that Roethlisberger and Rivers are playing from the same draft class at this point in their careers. And I think you look at that and look at Eli Manning and think I mean, he's built some incredible equity from those 2 Super Bowls, but at some point you have to say he's gone through a few things. He's a veteran. He's got to play a little bit better than he has of late. And I think, again, it very well could be that he turns it around here late in his career with this new system, but I still don't know. And that's the biggest factor going forward. I feel a little bit more confident about what I'm going to get from other guys than Eli Manning. My
last thing on the Eli thing, at least from me, knowing what you know with Odell Beckham being healthy, Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard, Evan Engram, what they have. I mean, we don't know what their offensive line is going to be, but if you had to win one game tomorrow, you're taking Josh McCown, you're taking Patrick Mahomes, you're taking Andy Dalton, and Ryan Tannehill. I mean, you said Eli's got to be better. Tannehill didn't even play, so you're taking all those guys over Eli for one game next year?
Well, you're not looking at it in aspect of one game, because a lot of things can happen in one game. I think that's a question that people ask to make it sound like it's something to make a decision based on, but you're not looking at it one game. You're looking at, given the same things that are around, you have to put each quarterback in the same situation over a long period of time to see physically who's better. And right now, I know and for the Giants fans, Eli, I get this 2 Super Bowls immortalized and all that, but when you look at it, if you look at it and pull back and see what he's actually done, it's not there, and that makes it a big unknown versus the guys that either are younger and more talented right now that are coming up, or some guys that, if you put them in the same situation with the same advantages, that could perform better than Eli.
For your 2019 quarterback list, which rookie of this draft class do you think will be the highest one on your list next year?
Well, right now, the guy I like most and potentially is going to play a lot just by the situation is Josh Rosen. And just look at the pro readiness, the situation for Sam Bradford. We know he's not going to stay healthy. Mike Glennon, what happened to him versus Mitchell Trubisky last year. So I bet Josh Rosen is probably going to play the most easily at Tyrod Taylor. Staying in front of Baker Mayfield, you have 2 quarterbacks, the Jets, standing in front of Sam Darnold. So I think Josh Rosen is the best bet to play the most. And just by that, I think that's where he's going to be ranked higher than the other guys.
And Vinny, last one from me. The only other person I felt was kind of slighted on this list is Cam Newton at 19. Now he has North Turner. Greg Olsen missed a lot of time last year. 19 for Cam Newton I just felt was way too low. And what are your thoughts putting him there?
Well, definitely you're not alone on that one, I'll tell you that. But, you look at it and just look at the efficiency and the turnovers of late. And the turnovers have just been shocking. And that was a big part of this is the efficiency. And you look at that, that's why I included career passer rating just to give them a little bit of career bump. And then I examined it further to the last 2 years and what they've done and going forward. So I know there are a lot of things. Cam Newton, again, high upside. We know he's just very frustrating because he's very inconsistent. From game to game, he's got a high ceiling of talent that, talent-wise, I mean, you put him right there in the top 5. But that also makes it frustrating when the execution doesn't agree with that as a passer. And as much as he ran well last year, he wasn't as efficient as a runner that we've seen in the past. It took him more volume to get to that point. So there's a lot of things that you like about Cam Newton from year to year, game to game, but you just wish he would put it all together and be more like that MVP consistently, more so than the last 2 seasons here.
And Vinny, if there was one guy on that list, and you're going to do when you talk fantasy football and you talk about football, it really is all about predictions and forecasting. Who would you predict their forecast to make maybe the biggest jump, possibly into even the top 5 by the end of this season? Is there somebody up there that you think could dethrone maybe a Wentz or one of those guys that you have in the top 5?
Well, I would look at Marcus Mariota, and he's a good profile player here because Corey Davis, I think that's going to be a big difference, having that legitimate receiver. We saw in the playoff game the potential there against the Patriots, what they were able to do together. You now have a special receiving back there in Deion Lewis, and you look at Matt LaFleur, and we know what he did with Jared Goff last year. So Marcus Mariota, the way the end of the season, that rally against the Chiefs in the playoffs, and the things he did, I think things are going to open up more for him in the pass game. So Mariota's a guy I'm looking to shoot ahead, and we already know there's a bit of a separation between him and Jameis Winston. Again, a guy with immense talent that hasn't kind of lived up to it. So Mariota, I think, can separate himself from Winston in that class with a big year, and I expect him to have that for the Titans in 2018.
All right, well, Vinny, thank you so much for a couple of minutes over the Top Sports Radio. You can catch Vinny at Vinnie Iyer on Twitter. sporting news writer and Locked On Network. And thank you so much for giving us a couple minutes. Maybe we'll catch up with you as the season gets closer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. That's Vinnie Iyer talking football. Some very interesting thoughts. And listen, he defended himself the best that he could about the Eli Manning stuff. I don't think that Josh McCown, though, over Eli is very defensible, especially when you talk about, not just one game going forward. Well, Josh McCown might not have one game left. But I didn't want to keep harping on it, but let's be honest.
We could have done the whole hour and a half on that. I thought Eli Manning was very low. For anybody who didn't see his list, we posted it up on our Twitter. We'd love to get your thoughts of his list. There was a couple questionable ones, a couple of people I thought got snubbed. We pointed out the ones I think we hit everybody we should have hit on that list. But very interesting. It's always a good debate. So check it out on our Twitter. We have his list up there of the top quarterbacks.
And you're always going to have disagreements with a list like that, and that's what makes it fun. And, you can argue one or two spots, but the gripes that I had, Dak Prescott at 15, losing your wide receiver and losing your tight end. Cam Newton at 19, who's been to a Super Bowl, now has Norv Turner. And Eli Manning, you're putting Ryan Tannehill above him after they lost Jarvis Landry, coming off an ACL, and you have Tannehill over Eli. And like you guys mentioned, Josh McCown. Who knows? Who knows if people do it just for the New York media stir, and it got us stirred up. So